She worked minimum wage at McDonald's drive-thru. "How can I help you?" she'd say to every customer. But that day, the voice coming through the car window was different. "Please help me, they're holding me hostage." That's when her old FBI training kicked in. Welcome to Forgotten Voices. Before we dive into this incredible tale of hidden expertise and life-saving instincts, tell us in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories of everyday heroes deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who serve in the most unexpected places. Sarah Martinez had never imagined she'd be asking, "Would you like to make that a large?" At 47 years old, the red visor with the golden arches felt heavier each day, a constant reminder of how far she'd fallen from the life she'd once known. 15 years ago, she'd been Special Agent Sarah Martinez, FBI Crisis Negotiation Unit. She'd talked armed bank robbers into surrendering, convinced suicidal individuals to step back from the edge, and spent countless hours in high-stakes conversations, where every word could mean the difference between life and death. The FBI had been her world, her identity, her calling. She'd graduated top of her class from Quantico, specialized in psychological profiling and crisis communication, and built a reputation as one of the Bureau's most effective negotiators. Her voice had been a weapon of peace, capable of diffusing situations that others couldn't even approach. But that was before the incident in Cleveland, before the hostage situation at the downtown bank, where everything had gone wrong, before 3 innocent people died because she'd misread the subject, chosen the wrong words, pushed when she should have pulled back. The official report had cleared her of wrongdoing, but Sarah knew the truth. Her mistake had cost lives. The guilt had eaten away at her like acid. She'd started drinking, missing work, losing sleep to nightmares, where she heard those final gunshots over and over again. When the Bureau offered her early retirement with full benefits, she'd taken it without hesitation. She'd thought she was done saving lives forever. That was 3 years ago. Since then, she'd burned through her savings, lost her house, and watched her marriage collapse under the weight of her self-destruction. Now she lived in a 1-bedroom apartment on the wrong side of town, working the evening shift at McDonald's because it was the only job that would hire someone with gaps in their employment history and no recent references. The McDonald's on Fletcher Avenue was like thousands of others across America, bright fluorescent lights, red and yellow everything, and the constant smell of frying oil. Sarah worked the drive-thru from 4 p.m. to midnight, a position that suited her need to remain invisible. Most customers didn't even look at her when they pulled up to the window. She was just a voice in their earpiece, a hand that took their money and gave them food. They were usually in a hurry, distracted by their phones or their conversations, treating her like part of the machinery rather than a human being. Sarah preferred it that way. She didn't want to make connections, didn't want to be remembered. She just wanted to get through each shift, collect her paycheck, and go home to her empty apartment where she could pretend the outside world didn't exist. Her manager, Kevin, was 26 years old and treated the job like it was the most important thing in the world. He was constantly reminding the staff about upselling customer service scores and the importance of keeping drive-thru times under 90 seconds. "Sarah, you need to smile more," he'd say during shift meetings. "The customers can hear it in your voice when you're not smiling." She'd nod and pretend to care, but inside she was thinking about how she'd once negotiated with international terrorists. And now she was being lectured about the proper way to ask if someone wanted apple pies with their order. The other employees were mostly teenagers working their first jobs, or older folks who'd never had better options. They were nice enough, but Sarah kept her distance. She'd learned the hard way that getting too close to people only led to questions she didn't want to answer. Despite her determination to remain detached, Sarah couldn't help but notice things. It was an occupational hazard of her former life. She'd been trained to observe human behavior, to pick up on verbal and nonverbal cues that others missed. She noticed that the woman in the blue Honda came through every Tuesday at 5:30, always ordered the same thing, and was probably going through a divorce based on the legal documents visible in her passenger seat. She noticed that the teenager in the black pickup was dealing drugs, based on the frequency of his visits and the fact that he never actually ordered food. She noticed that Mr. Henderson, the elderly man who came through every Friday, was probably lonely and just wanted someone to talk to, which was why he always asked detailed questions about the menu, despite ordering the same coffee and apple pie every week. Sarah filed all these observations away without acting on them. It wasn't her job to solve people's problems anymore. She wasn't a federal agent. She was just a drive-thru worker who happened to be very good at reading people. But old habits died hard. And sometimes she found herself automatically categorizing customers: stressed parent, first-time visitor, potential shoplifter, domestic abuse victim. The training never really left you, even when you desperately wanted it to. Her co-workers had started to notice her unusual accuracy in predicting customer behavior. She could tell when someone was going to complain about their order before they even tasted it, or when a customer was going to drive off without paying. Kevin had started asking her opinion about suspicious customers, though he had no idea why her instincts were so sharp. 3 months into her job at McDonald's, Sarah was beginning to think she might actually be able to build a stable, if unfulfilling life. She'd developed a routine, paid her bills on time, and managed to go entire days without thinking about her former career. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday in October, just after 9 p.m. The dinner rush was over, and things had settled into the slow rhythm of later wine service. Sarah was restocking napkin dispensers when she heard the familiar chime that indicated a car had pulled up to the drive-thru speaker. "Welcome to McDonald's. May I take your order?" she said automatically, not bothering to look at the security monitor that showed the vehicle. There was a pause, longer than usual. Then a male voice said, "Yeah, I need 2 Big Mac meals, large, with Cokes." Something in the voice triggered Sarah's attention. It was too controlled, too careful. She glanced at the monitor and saw a dark sedan with tinted windows, 2 figures in the front seat, but the image was too grainy to make out details. "Will that be for here or to go?" Sarah asked. Though drive-thru orders were obviously to go, she was buying time, trying to get a better read on the situation. "To go," the voice replied, still that same careful tone. "Your total is $18.47. Please pull around to the first window." As the car moved to her window, Sarah felt the familiar tingle of alertness that she'd experienced countless times during her FBI career. Something was wrong with this picture, but she couldn't quite put her finger on what. The dark sedan pulled up to Sarah's window, and she got her first clear look at the occupants. The driver was a middle-aged man with sunglasses, despite the fact that it was after dark. His passenger was a woman, younger, with blonde hair and makeup that looked like it had been carefully applied hours earlier. $18.47, Sarah said. Opening the window, the man handed her a $20 bill, and that's when Sarah noticed his hands. Calloused, with small scars across the knuckles. Prison tattoos barely visible under his sleeves. Her trained eye automatically catalogued the details. Ex-con, probably violent crimes, currently tense about something. But it was the woman who really caught her attention. She was sitting perfectly still, looking straight ahead, not engaging in the normal small talk or casual movements that characterized most passenger. Her posture was rigid, controlled, like someone trying very hard not to do anything wrong. "Here's your change," Sarah said, handing back the coins and bills. The woman turned slightly, and for just a moment, made direct eye contact with Sarah. In that instant, Sarah saw something that made her blood run cold. Pure, desperate fear. That woman's lips barely moved, but Sarah, trained in reading micro-expressions and subtle communications, caught the whispered words, "Help me." Sarah's mind raced as she processed what she'd just witnessed. Every instinct from her FBI training was screaming that this was a kidnapping in progress. The woman's behavior, the man's nervous energy, the careful control of the all fit the profile. But she was just a drive-thru worker now. She had no authority, no backup, no official capacity to intervene. Her first instinct was to hit the panic button under the counter, but that would bring local police who might not understand the delicate nature of the situation. "Your order will be ready in just a minute," Sarah said calmly, buying herself time to think. She turned away from the window and grabbed the nearest co-worker, a 19-year-old named Marcus, who was working the grill. "I need you to take over the window for a few minutes," she said quietly. "Tell the customer their order is taking a little longer than expected, but keep them talking. Ask if they want any sauces, if they need napkins, anything to keep them here." Marcus looked confused but nodded. Sarah quickly walked to the manager's office, where Kevin was doing paperwork. "I need to use your phone," she said. "Right now, Sarah, you can't make personal calls during this, isn't personal. There's a situation in the drive-thru. I need to call the police, but I need to do it the right way." Something in her tone made Kevin look up. He'd never heard Sarah speak with such authority and urgency. "What kind of situation?" "The kind where someone's life is in danger." "Give me the phone." Sarah dialed 911, but instead of giving a standard emergency report, she asked to be transferred to the crisis negotiation unit. It was a long shot. Most local departments didn't have dedicated units, but she had to try. This is Detective Morrison. How can I help you? Detective, this is Sarah Martinez. I'm a former FBI negotiator, and I have a possible kidnapping in progress at my location. I need to handle this carefully to avoid escalating the situation. There was a pause. Can you verify your credentials? Sarah rattled off her former badge number and supervisor's name. You can call Deputy Director Reynolds if you need confirmation. But right now I have a victim and a suspect sitting in my drive-thru, and I need backup that understands hostage protocols. Where are you located? Sarah gave the address and a quick summary of what she'd observed. Detective Morrison, to his credit, didn't waste time with unnecessary questions. We're sending units to your location, but they'll stage out of sight. What do you need from us? Give me 10 minutes to try to get more information. If this goes sideways, I'll signal you. But right now, the victim is safest if we don't spook the subject. Sarah hung up and returned to the drive-thru window. Marcus was doing his best to keep the customers engaged, but she could see the driver getting impatient. Sorry about the wait, Sarah said, taking back her position. We're just finishing up your order. Sarah studied the two people in the car more carefully. The man was definitely agitated, checking his mirrors, drumming his fingers on the steering wheel, constantly scanning the area. Classic behavior of someone who knew they were committing a crime and was worried about being caught. The woman had barely moved, but Sarah noticed that her left hand was positioned strangely, pressed against the window. It took Sarah a moment to realize what she was seeing. The woman was trying to show her something. Looking more carefully, Sarah could see that the woman's sleeve had ridden up slightly, revealing what looked like rope burns around her wrist. Fresh ones. You know what? Sarah said suddenly, leaning closer to the window. I think we messed up your order. Can you tell me exactly what you wanted again? It was a stalling tactic, but it also gave her a chance to make extended eye contact with the woman. In that moment, Sarah saw something she recognized from her years of working with trauma victims. The desperate hope that someone, anyone, might understand what was happening to her. The woman's lips moved again, almost imperceptibly. Please, the man was starting to get suspicious. Look, lady, we just want our food. How hard is it to put some burgers in a bag? Sarah recognized the edge in his voice, frustration building toward anger. In her FBI days, she'd learned that this was a critical moment in any crisis situation. Push too hard, and the subject might snap. Don't push hard enough, and you lose the opportunity to help. I understand you're in a hurry, Sarah said calmly. Just want to make sure you get exactly what you paid for. Sarah made a decision that went against every safety protocol she'd ever learned. Instead of waiting for backup, instead of playing it safe, she chose to act. She grabbed a notepad from beside the register and quickly wrote, "Are you being held against your will?" Then she held it up, angled so only the woman could see it. The woman's eyes widened, and she gave the tiniest nod. Sarah wrote another note. "Is he armed?" Another small nod. Sarah's mind shifted into full crisis negotiation mode. She had a confirmed hostage situation, an armed subject, and a victim who was cooperating. But she was also completely on her own, with no backup immediately available. Working from a McDonald's drive-thru window, she wrote one more note. "I'm going to help you. Stay calm." The woman's eyes filled with tears, but she managed to maintain her composure. Now Sarah needed to figure out how to separate the victim from the subject without getting anyone killed. In her FBI days, she would have had a full tactical team, surveillance equipment, and hours to plan. Here, she had a headset, a cash register, and whatever she could improvise. "Sir," she said to the driver, "I'm really sorry about this, but our system is showing that your credit card was declined. Do you have another form of payment?" It was a lie, but it was designed to create a problem that would require the man to focus on something other than watching his victim. The man cursed and started digging through his wallet. "I paid cash. What are you talking about?" "You're absolutely right. I'm sorry. Let me check our register again." Sarah pretended to punch buttons on the cash register, while actually activating the silent alarm that would alert police to a robbery in progress. Within 30 seconds, she saw the first unmarked police car take position in the parking lot across the street. "You know what?" Sarah said. "There seems to be some confusion. Why don't you park over there for just a minute while I get my manager to sort this out? I'll bring your order right to your car." She pointed to a parking spot that was in full view of the police units, but isolated from other customers. The man hesitated. This wasn't part of whatever plan he'd had, but refusing would look suspicious. Fine, but make it quick, he said. As the car moved to the designated parking spot, Sarah grabbed Kevin. Call 911 and tell them the subject is in position. Then stay away from the windows. She quickly prepared 2 bags of food, not the order that had been placed, but food nonetheless. Then she walked out of the restaurant toward the parked car. This was the most dangerous part. She was approaching an armed suspect with no protection, no backup immediately available, and no way to know how he might react. Chapter 11. The confrontation. Sarah approached the driver's side window, food bags in hand. The man rolled down his window, and she could see that he was sweating despite the cool evening air. "Here's your order," she said calmly. "Sorry for the confusion." As she handed over the bags, she positioned herself so that she could see both the man and the woman. Clearly, the woman was still sitting rigidly, but Sarah could see her watching hopefully. "Everything okay here?" Sarah asked casually. "Everything's fine," the man replied quickly. "We need to get going, of course. You folks have a safe drive." Sarah started to walk away, then stopped and turned back. "Oh, I forgot to ask, did you need any ketchup packets?" It was code. She was giving the woman one last chance to signal if she needed immediate help. The woman looked directly at Sarah and mouthed, "Now." Sarah dove to the ground, just as police spotlights illuminated the car from 3 directions. "Police. Turn off the engine and put your hands where we can see them." What happened next was a textbook example of how crisis situations can unfold when everyone knows their role. The man, realizing he was surrounded, initially reached for something under his seat, probably a weapon, but stopped when he saw the number of officers positioned around him. "Don't do it," Sarah called out from her position on the ground. "You're outnumbered, and nobody needs to get hurt here." Her voice carried the authority and calm that had once diffused situations much more dangerous than this one, even though she was lying on the asphalt behind a McDonald's. She was once again Special Agent Sarah Martinez. The man slowly raised his hands. Within seconds, tactical officers had extracted him from the car and placed him in custody. The woman was immediately surrounded by paramedics and victim advocates who'd been standing by. Detective Morrison approached Sarah as she dusted herself off. "That was either very brave or very stupid," he said. "Probably both," Sarah admitted. "How's the victim?" "Scared but unharmed. She says he grabbed her from a parking garage downtown about 3 hours ago. She thought she was going to die." Sarah nodded. She'd seen that look before, the combination of terror and relief that came when someone realized they were going to survive something they thought they wouldn't. "We're going to need a full statement from you," Morrison continued. "And I have a feeling the Bureau is going to want to talk to you as well." The story made national news within 24 hours. "Former FBI agent working at McDonald's saves kidnapping." Victim was the kind of headline that captured public imagination and sparked debates about everything from the treatment of veterans to the value of service industry workers. Sarah found herself at the center of a media storm she hadn't wanted or expected. Reporters camped outside her apartment. Her phone rang constantly with interview requests. And suddenly everyone wanted to know how a trained federal agent had ended up working at a fast food restaurant. She declined most of the interviews, but she did agree to speak with one local news station, mainly because she wanted to set the record straight about what had happened. "I wasn't trying to be a hero," she told the reporter. "I was just trying to help someone who needed help. That's what you do when you see someone in trouble, but you risked your own life. You could have been killed." Sarah considered the question carefully. 3 years ago, I thought my career was over because I made a mistake that cost people their lives. Last night, I realized that maybe my career isn't defined by my worst moment, but by what I choose to do with the skills I have. The interview went viral, shared millions of times across social media platforms. Comments ranged from praise for her heroism to criticism of a system that left skilled professionals working minimum wage jobs. A week after the incident, Sarah received a phone call that changed everything. "Agent Martinez, this is Deputy Director Reynolds." Sarah's former supervisor, the man who'd signed off on her early retirement and told her she could always come back if she ever felt ready. "Sir," Sarah replied, automatically falling back into the formal tone she'd used during her bureau days. "I saw the news coverage. Hell of a thing you did there. I was just doing what anyone would have done." "No, you weren't. You were doing what a trained federal agent would do. The question is, are you ready to be a trained federal agent again?" Sarah looked around her small apartment, at the McDonald's uniform hanging in her closet, at the life she'd built from the ruins of her former career. "I don't know if I'm the same person who left the bureau 3 years ago," she said honestly. "Good," Reynolds replied. "The person who left 3 years ago was broken. The person who saved that woman's life last week, that's someone we need." The offer was everything Sarah had thought she wanted. Reinstatement at her former rank, assignment to the crisis negotiation unit, a chance to rebuild the career she'd destroyed. But she found herself hesitating. "Can I think about it?" "Take all the time you need." "But Sarah, don't think too long. The world needs people who know how to listen, how to read situations, how to help when others can't or won't." Sarah returned to work at McDonald's the next day, much to everyone's surprise. Kevin had assumed she'd quit to pursue the numerous job offers that had come flooding in after the news coverage. "Why are you here?" he asked. "You could be working anywhere now." Sarah tied on her apron and checked the drive-thru equipment. "Because this is where I'm needed right now." It wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't entirely false either. She'd realized that her 3 years at McDonald's hadn't been a fall from grace. They'd been a different kind of training. She'd learned to see people as individuals rather than cases. To value every interaction, regardless of how small it seemed. To find dignity in honest work, regardless of how others perceived it. But she'd also realized that she had skills that could help people. And hiding from those skills wasn't protecting anyone. It was just protecting her own ego. 2 weeks later, Sarah submitted her resignation to McDonald's and accepted a position with the FBI, but not the one deputy director Reynolds had offered. Instead, she requested assignment to the Community Outreach Division, developing programs to train civilian workers in recognizing and responding to crisis situations. Her first assignment was creating a training program for retail and service industry employees, people who interacted with the public every day and were often the first to notice when something was wrong. 6 months later, Sarah stood in front of a room full of McDonald's employees, teaching them what she'd learned about recognizing signs of domestic abuse, human trafficking, and other crimes that often hide in plain sight. "You see more than you realize," she told them. "You interact with hundreds of people every day, and you develop instincts about who seems normal and who seems off. Trust those instincts." In the audience, she saw workers who reminded her of herself, people who'd been dismissed or overlooked, who'd been told their jobs weren't important, who'd internalized the message that they didn't matter. 3 years ago, I thought my career was over," Sarah continued. "I thought the only thing I was good for was taking orders and making change. But it turned out that those skills, listening, observing, staying calm under pressure, were exactly what I needed to save someone's life." After the training session, a young woman approached her. She was maybe 20, with the tired look of someone working multiple jobs to make ends meet. "Ms. Martinez, I think I might have seen something at my other job. A girl who comes in, she always seems scared, and her boyfriend never lets her talk. I didn't know if I should say anything, ... double quotes." Sarah smiled. "Let's talk about it, and call me Sarah." A year later, Sarah's training programs had been implemented in over 1,000 locations across the country. Retail workers, fast food employees, and service industry professionals had been credited with helping identify dozens of crimes in progress and assisting hundreds of victims. The woman Sarah had saved, Jennifer Walsh, had become an advocate for other trafficking victims and frequently spoke alongside Sarah at training events. "Sarah didn't just save my life that night," Jennifer would tell audiences. "She showed me that heroes don't always look like what we expect. Sometimes they're wearing a McDonald's uniform and asking if you want fries with that." Sarah kept in touch with her former co-workers at McDonald's. Marcus had used the confidence boost from helping with the rescue to apply for the police academy. Kevin had been promoted to district manager and made sure that all his stores participated in Sarah's training programs. And every few months, Sarah would stop by the McDonald's on Fletcher Avenue, not as a trainer or an expert, but as a customer. She'd order a coffee and remember the lesson she'd learned, that dignity came not from what job you had, but from how you treated the people around you. The drive-thru window where she'd once worked now had a small plaque that read, "Heroes work everywhere. Look for them." So I ask you now, have you ever encountered someone working a service job who seemed to have hidden depths? Someone who treated their work with unexpected professionalism or showed skills that surprised you? Share their story in the comments. Tell us about the service workers who've made a difference in your life. Because here at The Human Stories, we believe that every job has dignity and every worker deserves respect. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please share it and subscribe. Help us honor the hidden heroes working all around us, in the most ordinary places, doing extraordinary things. And remember, the next time you're at a drive-thru, a checkout counter, or any service location, look beyond the uniform. You never know what skills, experience, or strength the person helping you might possess. This video is a fictional dramatization created for entertainment purposes only. Any resemblance to real individuals, locations, or events is purely coincidental. This story was crafted to highlight themes of service, dignity, and the hidden potential in every worker through emotional storytelling.